Hi, this is Robin, and this is actually the 50th video in a workshop on my PhotoMaker Academy YouTube channel. So I thought, well, why don't I do something fun and give you some tips for something to try either for yourself on self-portraits or to use on portraits that you take of others. And it could be a fun thing to use as gifts or to post on social media. And actually, they could also be pretty cool techniques for certain commercial work too. So you may have seen examples of people dividing a portrait photo, whether it's people or pets or whatever, in half, and then either hand drawing or illustrating or painting the mirror image, half of the image that was taken away. And so these are some examples that I just pulled from the web. So you can see again, there's half a portrait here and half of hand drawn, and the same kind of things here. And it doesn't have to just be portraits and people or portraits of people. I mean, because here's the car and they've done a similar thing here. You also don't have to do just a straight divide up and down. You can see where a couple of these have gotten creative with masking as to how they divided up the images. But it's this kind of effect that I'm going to be doing in this video workshop today. So rather than hand drawing, since my channel is about Photoshop, in this video I'm going to show how to achieve similar looks using Photoshop tools. And I'll walk through two step-by-step demos using portraits. So in the first demo, I'll show you how to get a half photo and half sketch look. So that's again more like this or this kind of a thing here. And in the second demo, I'll show how to use half of a photo and half of a neural filter style transfer approach using the neural filters from Photoshop. Now, again, just because I'm going to do the demo with portraits, don't feel limited for whatever you want to do. You can use whatever you want. As I said, you can use cars, you can use any other kind of objects, pets, other animals, whatever. What I'm going to do is list the start times for each of the two demos in the description below the video. So you can hop to the style that you want to work with, or if you come back and want to go to a specific one, it'll be easier to find it by just clicking a link. I'll also try to include links to the two stock photos that I'm going to use for my demos. So that way, if you just want to do the first run-throughs trying the same images I used, you can try that. But I'd say for your own projects, select photos with clear, simple lines. So don't go for things with too much complexity or too much detail, because they won't work as well with the Photoshop effects that I'm going to show you. Okay. The other thing is that if you want to do this straight on, half and half kind of look, it is better if you have your subject straight on to the camera, because it will just make it easier to divide the image. But again, you can do what you want and go for the look that you want. One last little administrative sort of thing. If you are new to my channel or haven't subscribed yet, then you might, and if you want to be notified of any future educational workshops, please feel free to click on the free subscribe button below the video, plus the black bell icon that's down there too. And then you would get a single notification directly from YouTube when I release free content each month. If you've subscribed already, there's no need to click again. You're all set. So let me just pause this video for a moment while I set up for demo number one. And as I said, demo number one will be create half photo, half sketch look. So hold on for a moment. This is demo number one. In this video, I'm going to show how to use this photo to create a half and half photo, half sketch or pencil sketch look. So the first step that we're going to do oh, by the way, this is a stock photo. It came from Unsplash, and this Tamara is the photographer. Okay, so the first step that we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the background layer here in our layers panel. So you can left click and drag that to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, the box with the plus, or with that background layer active, you can do a Control or Command J to jump up a copy, either way. So the first main step here after we get that background duplicated is to select our subject. And the way I'm going to do that is to use one of the selection tools in the toolbars. You can use any of them. I'm going to use the object selection tool, which is this box with the arrow going into it. And then coming over to the options bar, you can click on select subject. If you have your contextual taskbar pinned or available like mine, you can also just click there. It does exactly the same thing, and wait for Photoshop to process. Okay, so now we have the automated selection that was created by Photoshop. I suggest that you always just do a quick look around and be sure that it has done it accurately, because it is the robot here making the selection. If it looks good, and I'm going to go with this the way it is, then you want to jump that selection and that subject to its own layer. So Control or Command and J, and there we go. We have jumped this. If I turn these eyes off on those layers, you can see that now we have the subject all alone on her own transparent layer. And these little boxes are, as I said, transparencies. So that means you can see whatever is behind them on lower layers. And that's why when these eyes are back on, you can see the background. So let's just label this so we can keep track. This is the subject only layer. Okay, after you have gotten that onto its own layer like that, we want to convert that layer to a smart object. To do that, come to the empty right area, right click, come down to where it says Convert to Smart Object, and left click on that. And be sure you get this little icon that indicates that it is a smart object. The next thing you want to do is duplicate that layer. So again, you can do a Control or Command J, and then you now have a copy of that layer that you can work with. So now that we have this duplicate layer, we want to, on this layer, invert this image. So to do that, come to the top of the interface, to the Image menu right here, upper left, click on that, come down to Adjustments, and come to the flyout about halfway down to Invert, and left click on that. And you can see that Photoshop has inverted the colors in that image. So now the next thing to do while this layer is still active is come back over to the Layers panel, come down to this second box where it says Normal to the blend modes, click on that little down arrow, and we want to apply a color dodge blend mode. So that's right there in that second group, left click. And as you can see, that's going to turn your image white. So to recover some details and some lines that will form the basis of the sketch effect that we're trying to create, we have to add a Gaussian blur. So again, still with this layer active, let's go up to Filter, come down to Blur, and fly out to Gaussian blur. So again, Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur, click. And you can see as soon as you do that, you start getting some lines. So the more to the left you are in this Gaussian blur dialog box, and I always keep my preview on, the fewer details. The more to the right you pull that slider, the more details you'll get. So you might just want to try it and see what other effects you can get for other things you want to achieve. There is no formula for where to pull the radius or a number to use. You just have to look for your image and pull the slider to taste to when it looks like it's getting a sketch effect. That might be a bit much for mine. Yeah, I kind of like that. So you're getting that line drawing effect, and right now it sort of looks like a colored pencil drawing. So once you get yours to where you want for a sketch look, then click OK in that box. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is, if you want to go to a regular pencil sketch look versus the colored pencil sketch look, the next thing is to add a black and white adjustment layer. So again, bottom of the Layers panel here on the right, down to that circle with the line through it, left click on that for the adjustment layers, and click on black and white. So we have a black and white adjustment layer, and you can see that that's turned the entire image to black and white. So now what we want to do is, if you want to keep your sketch on the lighter side, you may not want to do what I'm going to do now, but I tend to like mine a little darker and I think it's easier to see. So with that black and white layer still active, come again to the blend modes box, click the down arrow, and I'm going to use multiply. Left click, and so we now have a multiply blend mode applied to that black and white layer, and you can see that it's made it darker here. Now we're still bringing back a little bit of that color, but if we make more layers of this, it won't do that. Now it also, by doing the black and white like that, has darkened the background, as you can see here. Let me just see. And I want to be able to keep my my background, my landscape background here for this image that I'm putting together. If you don't want to, that's not an issue. But what that means is I need to add a layer mask that will protect that background from getting dark. So I'm going to come back down in the layer stack. I'm going to come back to this subject only layer and left click on it to make it active. And I'm going to do a control click on this layer to make a copy of that. And then I want to come up to this black and white layer, toss out the black and white layer mask, just click Alt or Option and drag it down, and then create a new layer mask by coming to the bottom of the Layers panel, clicking on the box with the circle, and there we go. So now with this new layer mask, we are showing the model in the white area of the mask, and we are protecting and having anything that happens with the black and white affecting the area that's in white on the mask, and the black and white will not affect where it is black on the mask, which is the background. So that's good. That's what we want to achieve. So now if you want to try to get this black and white sketch a little bit darker looking, in addition to trying multiply, you can duplicate layers. And even if you don't use multiply, you can just try duplicating your black and white layers to make it darker. So I'll left click on that black and white, drag it to the add new layer icon, bottom of the layers panel. That's the box with the plus, and you can see it's made it darker. I'll do it again. So that's pretty good. I like that dark look. I used to do some fashion illustration, and I always liked that style of fashion illustration where there was a dark line on the outside and then thinner lines on the inside. But if that's too much for you, you can reduce it. So let's just try taking away the multiply on this layer and see if that makes it a little lighter. It does. So let's just leave that the way that is right now. Okay, so now we have all these layers. There's multiple black and white layers. If this is getting to be too many layers for you to want to deal with, or you know, it's keep an eye on, you can combine these into a group. So with that top black and white layer still active, you can press the Shift key, click on the bottom black and white layer. So those three layers, or however many you have ended up with, are all highlighted. Come to the bottom of the layers panel to this little icon that looks like a manila folder and left click, and we've got a group now so that they're all in one place and it's not as many layers building up. And we'll call this the black and white sketch effect. I just like to label my layers. Now, if you click on this little arrow, you'll see they're all still there. So if you want to go back and make any adjustments to them, you can. But by clicking that arrow, it sort of collapses and it looks like fewer layers in the layer stack. So the next thing I want to do is add a stamp layer here before we do anything else. So again, bottom of the layers panel, come to the add new layer icon, that box with the plus, you get the empty layer, and we're going to do the claw maneuver to create this stamp layer. So you simultaneously press Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E, and then we end up with this stamp layer. And what the stamp layer is essentially a merge or a composite of everything that's come before it all onto one layer without you having to smush down and collapse all these layers and lose all the work in case you want to go back again. So we've got that stamp layer as essentially a new base. Now, as I said, I want to keep my background layer that I started with in the original photo. If you don't want to, you can replace it with a color, a solid color or something like that. But in this video demo, I'm going to show keeping the background. In demo number 2, I'll show replacing a background with a solid color. So you at least get to see 2 different approaches. But the thing with this is, even though I'm going to keep this landscape behind the half and half image, I want to blur this so it's not too much of a distraction. So what I want to do is come back to my subject only layer, back down here lower in the layer stack, click on that to make it active. And again, I want to make the selection active. And to do that, I would click Control or Command and click on this layer, and you can see it has created the active selection. Now what I want to do is copy and make a landscape only layer, but there's no content on her on this layer behind her. As you can see, it's all transparency. To have something to copy, just click on the layer right below where there is actually some landscape. It keeps your selection active. And what we want to do is, right now we have her selected, so we want to invert the selection. So we're grabbing the landscape. So you can either go up to, let's see, where is it? Select inverse, or use this shortcut, which doesn't work on my computer, or you can, in your contextual toolbar, just click on the invert selection. And now you can see that the selection has changed to be around the outside of the image and not include the subject. So with this content layer active, we can do a Control or Command J, and here we go. We have jumped this landscape background right behind her. So we'll put landscape only to label that layer. All right, so now that we have that copied, we can drag this new landscape only layer to the top of the layer stack. So I'm going to left click on that and just drag, keeping my mouse depressed, and release. And so now we have the landscape only layer at the top. Now what I want to do here is I want to convert this to a smart object, because I want to do some blurring on this. And if I don't get the blurring just right in the first attempt, I don't want to have to go through that process all over again. So by converting it to a smart object, it gives you the flexibility to go back into the blurring without starting over. So in the empty area on the right, right click, convert to smart object, get that little icon, and then what we're going to do is go up to the filter menu at the top of the interface, come down to blur, and unlike before where we used the Gaussian blur, I'm going to use a motion blur this time. So filter, blur, motion blur, and you can do Gaussian if you want. And then we're going to work in this motion blur dialog box. Again, I have the preview clicked on. You can work with this little widget, and if you see, you just click on it and drag it. You can make your blur go in any direction you want, and this will be useful for other things you might want to do in Photoshop too, so it's just an FYI. I mean, unless you're really good at eyeballing angles and want to type in a number, but I'm better at seeing where the lines are going, and I pretty much want to follow the direction of the landscape. Yeah. It's too little. So I'm going to just jump up. There we go. So now, because we have this wall behind her, I'm looking and making sure it's not doing wacky things that would make it look like she's going to fall off the image. Okay, so I've got my angle set with that widget. Next, I want to adjust the amount of sharpening or blurring. So more to the left is less blur, more to the right is more blur. So I'm just, again, this is not a formula thing. I just pull it a little bit and see what I like the look of on the image. All right, I'm going to say that that is probably pretty good for my image. The trouble with this is I'm going to click OK to accept that blur, and I'm going to change this to landscape blur. Okay, and what we can see has happened is that in creating this blur, we've ended up with the blur going on top of the sketch effect. So what I want to do is come back to my subject only copy here, click on that. Oops, wrong one. Down here, subject only, and I want to select her again. So again, Control or Command, click on her for the selection, and then come back up to this landscape blur layer. And what I want to do is create a layer mask. But first, I'm going to invert this, I think. Let me just think what I'm doing here. So I can always invert it once I get it done. So layers, new layer mask, and there we go. That's what we wanted. So we are blocking her out with the black on this landscape blur layer, so she's not affected by the blur, but we do have the blur in the background. So that's just what I wanted to achieve there. So now we want to bring our photo of our model all the way to the top, because so far we've got the background settled, we've got the sketch effect, but we're going for a half and half look, half photo, half sketch. So we need to restore the photo part of it. So we'll come down one more time. Let's duplicate this subject layer by dragging it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, and then we will drag that layer all the way to the top of the layer stack. So left click and drag to the top. There we go. All right, now with her at the top of the layer stack, what we want to do now is create the split in the image. So to do that, some of the examples, or many of the examples you'll see online, are a very clean, straight line that comes straight through the center of your subject. And so I'm going to show how to do that by using the rectangular marquee tool. So here in the toolbar, this rectangle, it looks like a little dashed rectangle. So just click on that so you see the black. And then you have to decide which half of your image that you want to be the photo and which half you want to be the sketch. So I think I will just, with this rectangular marquee tool active on this subject layer at the top of the layer stack, I'm just going to click and start dragging out halfway through this image to create a selection that's halfway. And I don't want it to be perfect. And then release when you get it where you want it. And actually, I think I might just try to keep it where she is. So if you pull it out to more than where you want it, like I just did, then you can go into Select menu up at the upper left, come down into Transform Selection, and let me just bring it down to closer to her. There we go. Okay, and then I'll click OK. All right, and then with your selection, and you can go all the way to the top if you want, but for mine, I think I'll just do it like that. And then once you get that rectangular selection that divides your image in half with the photo on one side and what will be the sketch on the other, then in the Layers panel, come to the bottom of the layer stack to the Add New Layer Mask icon. That's the box with the circle. And here we go. So it has kept the photo part by using the rectangular marquee selection on the photo, and it is blocking the photo from being on the part that you want to be the sketch. So we can see if we come to the bottom of the layer stack, we have gone from the original photo with the full landscape background to a half photo, half sketch effect. And then this, as I said, in this demo, I'm showing how you can keep your background if you have an interesting background. In the next demo, I'll show you how to replace it with a solid color if you want to do that. So this is the end of demo number 1 to create a half photo, half sketch look. And I'm going to pause the video for just a moment to set up for demo number 2. In demo number 2, I'm going to show you how to create a half photo, half art style look. And so that will be using one of the neural filters from Photoshop. So if you'll hold on. This is demo number 2. Now, as I said, in this demo, I'm going to show how to create a half photo, half art style look. And the art style that you get will depend on the style transfer reference image that you use. So you'll see what that means as we go along. So again, I'm working with a stock image, and if I can find the link, I will put the link to these stock images in the description below the video. We've got this bearded guy with a beanie, and this is from Unsplash. And I guess I didn't have the photographer's name for that one. So again, we're going to start by duplicating the background layer in the layers panel so that we don't work with the original. So I'm just going to left click, drag that to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, or else you could on that background layer do a Control or Command J to jump the copy up that way. So again, I'm going to start by selecting the subject as the first step and jumping that subject to its own layer. So in the toolbar, select any of the selection tools. I'm just going to use the object selection tool and click on select subject, and I have the contextual taskbar pinned here, so I often use that, but you can use the one in the options bar. Wait for Photoshop. Okay, and Photoshop has made that automated selection with marching ants around the outside of my subject. And again, I recommend that you always, when you're using these automated selections, just preview it and go around the edges and be sure it did what you want. I'm not going to be too perfectionist here. But what I do want to do, just to show you for something like this, is because I may not want this color background in my final image and he's got these little hairs, I'm going to go to the options bar at the top of the interface here, click on select and mask. Make sure that my refine edge tool is clicked over here on the left side. It's the second one down. And I want to, trying to think, let's see, let me go to the black one. So if you left click on this little arrow next to the thumbnail, you have a choice of how you want to work with your selecting and masking. I'm going to choose the black and white, and then just left click over in this area over here just to close that down. I'm going to put my radius setting to 2 or 3, and I'm going to click on Smart Radius to make that active. And then where my highlighter is, the green, maybe you can see there's a little thin line inside. That little thin line is actually the brush. Oh, there we go, the black. The black is the size of the brush. So don't use too large of a brush, and just try to gently, don't push it too far into the image, just tick some of the content and try to refine if you have little hairs like that. I just want to be sure that when we get the beard, it's not picking up any of the background. Okay, so again, I said I'm not going to spend forever doing this for purposes of demo, but just to let you know you can do that. And then I'm going to go back to the marching ants. Click over here. That's the only thing I'm going to do in here. I'm going to come down to the bottom of this settings panel and look at output 2, and I'm going to leave it as selection and click OK. All right, so now we have the marching ant selection around our subject. Let me pull out so you can see that the marching ants go all the way around him. Hopefully we've eliminated some of the green, and I'm going to do a Control or Command and J to jump him up to his own layer. So again, just like the girl from the previous, the model from the previous demo, we've got him on his own transparent layer, and you see the background because you see it through the transparency. This is a subject only layer. Okay. So now that we have him, what I like to do is I like to duplicate him just so I have what I call an insurance layer. So if something goes south, I don't have to start over with that. So I'm just going to drag him to the add new layer icon, the box with the plus, and I'll turn off the eye and we'll work with this layer here. I always set my tools back to the lasso just so I don't have weird things happening. Okay, so now we're going to convert this to a smart object. Okay, so again, right click in this empty area, come down to where it says convert to smart object, left click on that. Be sure you get the little icon in the lower right corner of the thumbnail that says it's a smart object. And now this time we're going to do a different approach. As I said, we're going to try a neural filter. So come up to the filter menu at the top of the interface, left click, come down to neural filters, left click, and Photoshop loads this interface for the neural filters, and you get the list of all the different neural filters, and then you get this settings panel, and each one has its own different settings. We're going to come down to the creative category right here and use style transfer. So just click that little button so it flips from off to on, and you'll see now it has changed and provided you with some tools here in the right hand panel. Now if you're looking at, let's just go down this from top to bottom. So what's highlighted now and what you're seeing now are presets, and there's two different kinds or sets of presets. There are what they call artist styles, and there's a little scroll bar here so you can scroll up and down to see this artist styles that Adobe provides. And then there are image styles. If you left click on that, then you see a different selection of image styles that are presets. And the way this works is, you can see, so this looks like an Edward Munch, you know, the guy who did the Scream, kind of a look to me as far as artist. So if you just left click on that and wait a moment, because it'll have to process, and you can see down here processing on device, it picks up the colors, and it uses this preset or any of these presets as a reference for both color and textures. So by using that preset, it's applied that kind of look to the subject. If I choose another artist style and wait for the processing on the device, see, you get a different look. And same thing happens if you use these image styles. I'm trying to think. Let's see what happens with this one. Okay, so you can see, I mean, you know, it's definitely not making it look exactly like, so if I click on this Van Gogh image here, it's not going to look exactly like that, but you can see it is picking up the color as reference and the textures as reference. So I'm just going to go back to this one because I think it's kind of nice. But so that is if you want to use the presets. If none of those are floating your boat for you, then what you can do is, and there's no presets you like, you can come right across to where it says custom and left click on that. And then what you'll see is that you can choose your own reference image. So it says select an image, left click on that little arrow, and then it says select an image from computer. So I'm going to left click on that, and then I'm going to go to my image, to my own computer, and just look down here. So nothing's showing up, and that's because it's got PNGs, and what I'm looking for are JPEGs. So just be sure if you see nothing that the file type is what you're looking for. So here are some of my images that I had pulled to use for this video. So here's the image we're working on right now. I had pulled from the web a Rene Magritte painting example. So this is Castle of the Pyrenees by Magritte, who's a surrealist painter who I really liked. So you could go online and find paintings that you might want to use as a reference image. From Shot Deck, which is a service that's used in the movie business, I grabbed this animation still of Linus from the Charlie Brown Christmas. And then also from Shot Deck, I grabbed a movie still from the movie Nomadland. So if you have a movie, or if you go online, you look for specific movies you like and they have a mood or a color palette or something you like, you can use them and make snips and then use them as reference images too. too. But I think I'll just stick with my Rene Magritte because I like him. So again, it's not going to end up with a rock over him. It's looking at the textures and the colors. Use this image. Here it shows up in the interface, and now it's processing, and you can see how it has interpreted this reference image on my subject. Now, granted, that's a little extreme, but you might, feel like you want something that extreme. But we do have these settings that then we can apply here below the reference settings so that you can adjust it to your taste. And again, what I could use here with this particular image is not a formula. Adjust the sliders to your taste. So let me just start and going with the strength. And again, for me, I just eyeball and watch the image and then try different settings. So let me maybe go see how much it changes it. I'm going to go about halfway maybe and see what happens here. Okay, so I'm going to leave strength for now because you can always come back and forth. Let's try the style opacity next. So I kind of like that style. So because at least even if it's more than what I might do in a normal life, it's easy to see that something's happening for a video. Again, don't jump the gun too much. Wait for Photoshop to process each time you do it. All right, and again, with the details, this is a little bit intense, so I think I'll come down about halfway. Yeah, that's a little mushy. Okay, and then background blur. So I'm going to replace his backgrounds, and this is just a solid background anyway, so I'm not going to do anything with background blur. If you are using your background in this image like I did in demo number 1, you may want to do some background blur. So, and another thing to think about is you may not want to just select your subject. Maybe you want to work with the entire image, so you can experiment with that too and see how that goes. And then in that case, you might want to play with background blur and just see what it does for you. Okay, and then I think I'll just add a little more brightness. So to the left is less bright, to the right is more bright. Yeah, that brightened it up. It might be a little bit much. Okay, I'll leave it there. And then depending on how much saturation you like, so again, to the right would be more saturation, to the left would be less. I'll just do more just so you can see that something's happening. I'm not a fan of oversaturation. Okay, so those are the the setting sliders that you can work with. You'll also see here it says preserve color, and there's an unchecked box. So what you can do is if you want to maintain your original color from your original image but pick up some of the other stylistic characteristics of your reference image, then you can left click on that and watch the image. See, so now we've gotten some of the roughness of the water and the waves and the rock, but you've kept your original colors. So just something to keep in mind. I'm going to let it use these colors just so we can see it more aggressively. Okay, and then again, and if you're not familiar with the neural filters, this is just if you want to give feedback to Adobe on how well you think it worked, but so that's nothing that affects your image. So I'll just hide that. Okay. So now we have to choose an output method, and I like to use new layer masked so that I will get the mask of him on the new layer. When you click OK, it'll send you back to your regular Photoshop interface. Here we are. Okay, so we have gotten him into our transfer style, and the mask has been created that it only affected him, and that's exactly what I wanted to happen here. Okay, so now if you want to replace the background, so we've got this pale green color here. So if let's just say we want to replace the background so that you can see that you can put a different color background on there if you want to. So let's say that I want to use a pale yellow because I think that would work well with the blues here as a complementary color. So what we want to do is bottom of the layers panel, come to the add new adjustment layer icon, that circle with the line, left click, pick solid color. Left click on that. And as I said, I want yellow, so I'm going to come and just left click somewhere in the yellows area throughout this whole spectrum. And then you can get as saturated or as dark as you want. So I'm going to go pretty pale. Just come up a little bit. There we go, that's good. I want to stay in the same tonality as that green that was behind him. Once you get the color that you like, click OK. And clearly it's blocking the entire image that we were just working with. So you want to left click on that color fill layer and drag it to just below the guy that we were working with. So there we go. So now we have a new yellow background behind our sketch or our art style subject that was based on the Magritte painting. Okay, so now we still don't have our photo because we're going for this half and half look. So we want to go back to our subject only layer and left click on that, make sure it's highlighted. And then we want to do a control or command and click on him. Well, tell you what, why don't I just drag him up. So left click on that duplicate copy there, and let's just drag him to the top of the layer stack. There we go. So now he is there, and we can create a mask on that layer. So we've got the transparent layer, and I want to create the layer mask by coming to the bottom of the layers panel and clicking on that add layer mask icon there. Okay, so now if you'll remember, in the first demo, I used the rectangular marquee tool to drag out a rectangle and have a very delineated line dividing the image half and half. But since this is kind of an artsy style, I said I would show you a different approach where we could be a little bit more free-form and a little bit softer to reveal the sketch effect. So what we want to do is, first of all, let's be sure we're working on the mask. So on that top layer that's activated, be sure the white frame is around the mask. We don't want to start painting out our guy. And then we want to, again, use Control or Command and left click on that mask. And what you'll see is that, again, it has made the selection active around him. And what that will do is as we paint on this mask, it'll help prevent you from painting outside the lines and onto the background. Okay. So now, rather than using the rectangular marquee tool, come down your toolbar to the brush tool. It looks like a little paintbrush. Left click, be sure there's black behind it. Then come to the options bar for that tool that runs across the top of the interface. See where the little brush tip example is here? Click that little down arrow. And then you can use any brush you want, depending on whether you want a soft edge, an airbrush, a hard brush. I have all kinds of specialty brushes, including the ones from Kyle T. Webster that have a lot of art brushes. So I'm actually going to use one of the Kyle Webster art brushes, and I'm just going to left click here because I've used it before. And then you can click anywhere up in this top bar to close that. And if you look here where my green highlighter is, you can see that it's an art brush. I'm going to use the right bracket key to make that bigger. So the black part is the brush, the green is just my highlighter. And you can see that it looks like an art brush, so it'll give me some more, it won't give me a hard-edged kind of a brush. It's going to be a soft painted kind of a look or effect. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to hide on the left side of this photograph. So on my mask, I'm going to paint with black and that brush on the left side. And it will start bringing back the style transfer effect from the layer below. And again, as I said, it's not going to be a straight line, and you can make it as straight or as soft and freeform as you want with the brush. So you can see we're bringing back. And then when you get to a bigger area, you can use your right bracket key to make the brush bigger. And again, see, look, by having this selection active on that mask, I'm not painting outside the lines here. And in any case, the effect is only on him, but I didn't want to bring back that green background. and you can go as far over as you want to. So let's see, you go, oh, phooey, my hand went crazy there. So since I'm painting with black, if you want to undo it, you just hit the X key on your keyboard and use white, which is now the foreground color, to get rid of where you goofed, or take some away from if you did too much. Okay. So now we have, our before and after. And oh, by the way, to close out the marching ants, you do a Control or Command D as in dog, and then that will get rid of the marching ants. And as you can see in this top layer here, that's what that brush, so it's a soft brush. And as I said, you can use a hard brush, you can use an airbrush, you can use whatever kind of brush that you want to paint on that mask. But that's the before with the just straight photo. And here's the half and half look with the Neural Filters style transfer on one half, the photo on the other, and we added a new color background behind our original photo. So anyway, that was it. That's the end of demo number 2. So I've showed you 2 approaches to creating a half and half image in Photoshop, half being half photo and the other half art style. In the first demo, we walked through the Photoshop tools that you'd need to use to create a sketch look. And again, you could use that if you think about it, and you use it on the whole image versus a half and half. If you're into coloring pages, like to do coloring or make it for your kids or whatever, you could use that technique to create coloring pages that you could print out also. And then in this second demo, I used the art style or image as a reference in the Photoshop Neural Filter to create the texture and color from the reference image on the original photo. So whichever approach you want to use, you reveal whichever half of the photo that you want to show. And as I said right up front, don't feel forced to have to just do this with people. Have fun experimenting with different subjects or objects. You can use different art styles and reference images, and you can use different masking techniques. So like I showed you in the original, if somebody's arm comes across into this area over here, maybe you want the whole arm to reflect whatever's on the photo side. So just have fun playing with it. Take care. Hope you enjoy.